What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the breakdown. It has been a while. Guilty. I went on vacation. Megan, I don't know what your excuse is, but we've been gone for a little while.
Yeah, we've been out of
commission.
Out of commission.
Out of commission. But we're back, and it is playoff time, baby. Oh my God. The trade deadline is far in the past now. There was some crazy movement that went on. It is time now to break down some of the opening round series and look forward to the potential of the BC finals that are going to be going on here shortly. A little foreshadowing. There is a series that has already concluded. It's already wrapped up. We'll talk more about that shortly. But there is still a semifinal series here in British Columbia that we have to get through. And that is the series we're going to start off with, the first round matchup, the Island Classic, as I like to call it, between the Nanaimo Timbermen and the Victoria Shamrocks. Currently, at the time of recording, this series is deadlocked, 2 games to 2 games, each getting one done at home and on the road, including Victoria, who got one done in Nanaimo last night when the Timbermen could have put themselves into a power position. And for several points throughout that game, it looked like they were going to, but Victoria able to get the job done and battle through for a late goal to be able to get that done. Let's break down some of the series so far because, Megan, for anybody that has not watched any of this, these are 2 teams that clearly do not like each other. This has been a bloodbath, and I think Coquitlam, who is the other team that is going to be moving on to the finals, they're probably sitting back with a big smile on their faces right now, knowing that the other series has been as aggressive, as physical as it has been. Just going down some of the notes so far from some of these games in, was it game 3, I believe? There's 43 penalty minutes split between the 2 teams. In game 1, there was 73. These 2 teams are just absolutely beating the hell out of each other. I think going into this series, for me personally, there was more pressure on a team like Nanaimo. We talked about them a lot this year in terms of how senior this team was. We saw what they did at the trade deadline, getting guys like Jared Masnick, Lincoln Wall out of Poco, Ashton Brown as well. He's a goaltender that we're going to be talking about here in a little bit. But a lot of acquisitions made by Nanaimo leading up to the deadline, at the deadline as well. This is a team that was going all in. So a little more pressure on them for my money. And Victoria, on the other hand, while they are sort of like Coquitlam in the sense of they consider themselves perennial contenders, they're always going to be a competitive team that is always going to battle for a playoff spot and ideally look forward to a minto. Their window, from what I understand, how they're looking at it internally, as well as what a lot of people, myself included, are looking at, they're planning on being a contender in a couple of years, mostly when the minto is back being hosted in BC in 2027. So all that to say, there is a bit more pressure on Nanaimo, I would say, considering all the acquisitions they made. They're a team that went all in. And they're playing without Jeremy Woodrick, who is another guy that we've talked about this year. Their big right-handed forward out of Saskatchewan. He's out for the year, done for the year due to injury. So talking about some of those acquisitions that they've made. Ashton Brown is one of the guys that I mentioned there a moment ago, and he's another guy that we've talked about throughout this year. He was formerly the starting goaltender in Poco. He was a huge part of the Saints getting towards the Minto Cup last year, getting as deep as they did in their run. Nanaimo made a decision at the beginning of these playoffs that Ashton Brown was going to be their guy. He got the start for game 1 in this first round against Victoria. Things didn't necessarily go his way. They also didn't really go Nanaimo's way overall. But this is where the benefit of the acquisitions that they made kind of come to play here a little bit, in the sense that they still had a pretty good safety net in Keegan O'Kino, who was their starting goaltender for the majority of the season before Ashton Brown rolled around. My question to you now, Megan, is considering all these acquisitions and the safety that they have in goal in having 2 quality number 1s, Ashton Brown, Keegan O'Kino, and then some of the other acquisitions they made, Jared Masnick, Lincoln Wall, Joel Mullen as well on the defensive end. How pleased do you think this Nanaimo management feels considering how well their acquisitions have played out to this point?
Yeah, I think, like you said, showing those 2 goalie acquisitions, or the 1 acquisition, you can see that they can lean on whoever they need to. Maybe Ashton Brown didn't have such a great start, but then Okino, my bad. Okino had a great comeback, and we saw that he could really step up to the plate again and show what he's made of.
Definitely. And I think like something that we were saying about him earlier in the year was, calling him Mr. Consistent. And I think that's kind of what he's been for Nanaimo in this stretch of games. It sort of seemed like he maybe lost his footing a little bit at the end of the regular season, but since having that confidence reinserted into his game since coming in here in the playoffs, he has just been outstanding, putting out some just incredible numbers. Another key piece of this series so far from the Nanaimo perspective is how well they've played defensively and how much they've been able to limit a guy on the Victoria end who we've talked about a ton this year as well, in Jet Klassen, who is, I mean, on the last episode that we did before this one, kind of talking about how he was, you know, teetering on being able to compete for 50 goals in a regular season, which is no small feat. That's a pretty incredible factor. He is now to this point has 4 points in 4 games, 2 of those being goals. So, I mean, nothing necessarily to scoff at, but when you think of how many goals he scored in the regular season and how much success he was having firing the ball, to be able to hold him to just 2 goals to this point, pretty quality feat, I would say, for Nanaimo's defensive end. And then Keegan Okino's bounce back is the other part that I would consider being the major factor right now for Nanaimo. I will say, so Game 4 went down last night at the time of recording, so it was on Monday night. Victoria, one of their big things so far in this series is they've had really good starts to games. Game 1 was huge in their favor. They got off running. They really didn't look back. Nanaimo did make it close. Of course, that did end up being a 1-goal game. Actually, I think 3 of the 4 games in the series so far have been 1-goal games. Oh, wow. So they haven't been anything outrageous for the most part. But Victoria, again, in Game 4, just last night, got off to a really good start again. And it looked like, I mean, they're a team kind of in desperation. If they lose that game, they're on the brink of elimination. So the start was certainly key, and they found that. Nanaimo then leans on their leadership a little bit, leans on their kind of veteran presence, and they climb back. And I remember saying to somebody that I was watching the game with last night, it kind of feels like Victoria is imploding a little bit. Nanaimo did end up actually taking the lead late in the third period. Victoria, though, able to kind of bounce back from that even within a game and get things back in their favor. It was actually, they went down on a 5-on-3. They were able to get a shorthanded goal. Ryan Lowe, he did get another one late in the third period that tied the game again after Nanaimo reclaimed the lead. And then it eventually led to Cohen Block scoring the game winner with 1:16 left in regulation. I want to ask you a little bit about this rivalry now between Nanaimo and Victoria, because not only is that, you know, a playoff series in general, and we know that the playoffs are a different beast compared to the regular season, but these are 2 teams that are geographical rivals as well. They're the 2 island teams in the league. When you have those 2 things clash, the high animosity, the high energy of a playoff series, and then you also add in these 2 teams that already don't like each other and they already see each other a ton throughout the season, what kind of toll do you think this series is taking on these 2 teams overall? Not just from a physicality standpoint, but also from a mental standpoint.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's taking a toll both mentally and physically. You're versing a team that is like your arch rival, right? So it's gonna weigh on you. I mean, like the height of the game continues to get higher and higher as you continue on through the series, and it's gonna be, yeah, an absolute battle continuing on. So excited to watch.
Yeah, and the other big thing about the series now that it is tied 2-2, or 2-2, excuse me, it's now best of 3. Right. The next win is going to be huge. Obviously, the one after that is going to be the most important one between these 2 teams, because one team is going to be on the brink of knocking their rival out, and the other team is going to be on the brink of elimination. So the intensity, like you said, is just going to continue to ramp up. Now looking to the Coquitlam perspective, and we are going to break down that Coquitlam Delta series here shortly. Kind of already talked about it a little bit off the top, but Coquitlam gets through their series relatively unscathed, pretty healthy. They were able to rest some guys at different points throughout the series and really utilize their depth. They're watching this series over there as it's going on, and they're seeing the penalty minutes rack up. They're seeing the physicality go on, and they're now kind of relaxing, waiting for that series to wrap up. How do you think Coquitlam is feeling right now, knowing how physical the other series is going on while they're sitting back pretty healthy right now?
they've got to be feeling pretty good, I'm assuming, but at the same time, I'm thinking of whoever makes it through this series is going to feel also really good about themselves. They're going to be like, we just got through an absolute war and we're ready to take on whoever's next.
I do wonder then at that point, whether you're Nanaimo or Victoria, whichever team does end up moving on, I wonder then if you sort of, I mean, whichever team it is going to be looked at as the underdog against Coquitlam. But kind of to your point, I wonder if whichever team gets out of that can kind of hang on to the mindset of, we got through that, we can get through anything, and kind of everybody likes an underdog story. Like, how much do you think that benefits a mindset of said underdog in a final?
I think it's huge. I mean, everyone's kind of always rooting for the underdog, no matter if you're an Adanac fan or not. And it's going to be super interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I think regardless of whoever makes it to the final, the conclusion of this semifinal series between Nanaimo and Victoria is going to be must-watch lacrosse for my money. So keep your eyes onto both teams' social medias. They usually announce there on game days when or where the games are going to be broadcasted. So I'll break down or when the dates of the next games in that series will be. But that gives us a chance now to move on to the other semifinal series in BC. It went down between Coquitlam and Delta, and notice how I'm talking a little bit in past tense there, went down because the series concluded on Monday night. Coquitlam successfully sweeps the Delta Islanders in rather handed fashion, I would say. And I want to be careful in the way that I word that because, I mean, like, I don't want to be disrespectful to the Delta Islanders. And we can talk a bit about them in terms of, I mean, I was calling them my dark horse team all year. And they did end up making it into the playoffs, of course. But there are a lot of lessons that they can take from a series like this that I think will benefit them in the long run. But the other reason that I want to be careful about my wording in that is that there were multiple points throughout every game, oftentimes at the beginning of these games in the first period, where Delta was very much so in the fight. Honestly, as well, there's a couple games through the second period at different points where this is a 1-goal game, a 2-goal game kind of thing before it finally does break open. So it's not necessarily like Delta is just kind of rolling over, just kind of getting into the playoffs and, who knows what happens after that. They were certainly in the fight at different points, but we're now looking at a team in Coquitlam that has been to the Minto Cup final the last 2 years in a row and has hopes of, or plans of being back in that final again this year, going up against a team in Delta who they're building towards the future. Like this was a significant step in the right direction for them, but you have to look at the overall picture here. You have one team with a ton of experience and another team that is looking to build on their experience. And I found this stat as I was kind of prepping for this episode. Delta's last playoff win coming into this series, and I guess this stat will now continue forward considering they got swept in this one. Their last playoff win was back in 2016, August 9th, 2016. And it was an 11-10 victory in overtime against the Coquitlam Adanacs. They'll, hopefully try to find a win against Coquitlam maybe next year if they make the playoffs. But then we look over to the other side of the script, and Coquitlam's last playoff loss, I believe it's now 14 straight playoff wins for Coquitlam. Their last loss, look at this, it was almost 2 years ago to the date, July 23rd, 2023 against the Victoria Shamrocks. So again, it just kind of speaks to the differences between the two teams in terms of their development, where they are right now. But Jackson Dillon for the Adanacs, he's another guy that we've talked about a ton this year in terms of how much he means to this team. He's a guy that has an incredibly bright future in the sport, looking towards the pro level in a couple of years when he's draft eligible. He has 25 points right now in the playoffs, 25 points through 4 games. I mentioned last night watching the game, I think right now he's in the running for the best junior A player in Canada. I know there's going to be some people in Ontario that have some things to say about that. We'll see. But just the way he's playing right now, and honestly putting up more assists than goals, and he's typically a goal scorer, is pretty incredible for him. Mentioning before some of the lessons that Delta can take from a series like this, and already talked about how they're kind of a developing team looking forward. What are the lessons, if you're the Delta Islanders, if you're head coach and general manager Logan Schuss, and you're trying to preach to your team things that you can take away from a series like this, what do you think some of those lessons are that he's preaching?
I mean, they're so close in some of those games, like you said. they're right there. It wasn't like they just steamrolled over top of them. So Delta can definitely, take certain lessons, like, they can still continue to develop, and maybe this is a building year for them, but next year they can really come out and show what everyone what they've kind of learned from this playoff season or playoff round right here.
Definitely. Excuse me. The biggest differences right now for me in this series between the two teams, we've already talked about Jacksonville, and the other one for me was Coquitlam's penalty kill.
Yeah.
They took 30 penalty minutes throughout the entire series, and it's no outrageous number, but still opportunities for Delta to be able to chip away at different points. 0 power play goals allowed for Coquitlam. So their special teams was just incredible. There's another theme that I think people probably noticed throughout this series, and it happened in every game. Game 1, it was a 10-4 final in favor of Coquitlam. Adanacs, they outscored Delta 4-0 in the third period. Move on to Game 2, that was a 14-4 final in favor of the Adanacs, who outscored Delta 5-0 in the second period. Game 3, 13-6 in favor of the Adanacs. They outscored Delta 5-0 in the second period. And then finally, Game 4 on Monday night went down to the third period, and Coquitlam held Delta scoreless once again, 3-0 in the third period. That's something that these players, these coaches, when they're doing their video session in the offseason, that's going to be something that they probably look at. You're not going to have a ton of success against anybody in any league at any level if you're consistently having these stretches of at least 20 minutes, obviously, where you're being held scoreless. But just goes to show like how strong Coquitlam's defenders are. Their goaltending, Jack Kask, who also got a little bit of a rest at different points throughout the series, kind of in the final minutes. Caden Lee would come in to give him the remainder of the game off. Okay, so then I want to turn our attention then and ask you about the Adanacs and kind of their legacy, or I'll find another way to word that, but I guess they're a team like we've talked about before, about how they're perennial contenders. They're always a team that are at the top of the standings, and they're oftentimes the team that other teams are looking at the top and trying to emulate and trying to find a way to turn that into their own franchise. What is it about this organization that breeds so much success so often?
What is the answer to that question, Tino? That is a very tricky question to come up with some kind of answer for. But honestly, I think like the buy-in in Coquitlam is different. I think like every organization in BC has great leadership, great styles to their play, but there's just something else here that you just can't put your finger on. Find.
Yeah, and it kind of, for my money, like it goes all the way through, even in their minor lacrosse system as well. Like you see all the kids that are going up through. I don't think it's called mini tyke anymore. When I was growing up, it was mini tyke and so on. But right away, the kids want a yellow helmet when they're playing in Coquitlam, right?
Totally.
Like it's almost like as soon as they get into the association at the youngest level, it's almost like that presence in the arena, that culture within the organization is immediately felt. And you come into the Palace here and you see the banners. Pat Coyle is their head coach. We've talked about him a ton this year. He has a banner up here as well. Like his number is retired. And then of course the Minto Cup banners aren't too bad as well. So you're right. All the teams throughout the league, they do a ton of work behind the scenes and everything like that. There's no disrespect to any of the other teams whatsoever. But like you said, there's just something different about Coquitlam. It seems like they just breed winners at this point. But then on the other side of things, going back to the Delta Islanders, there are a handful of guys on every team every year where their season comes to an end. But there's a handful of guys every year that are fifth years, which means that there are some guys on the Delta Islanders that just played their last junior lacrosse game ever, which of course is an incredibly sad thing. Like even myself, I was just a junior B player, but I still remember my last junior B game ever. And when my GM came into the locker room at the end of the game, like I couldn't even look him in the eyes. I was super emotional. But take us into the mindset a little bit of some of these fifth-year players that did just play their last junior game ever, and are kind of coming to terms with that the next morning of knowing that part of their career is in the past.
Yeah, like you said, it's super sad and it's heart-wrenching to think about. Putting yourself in their shoes is a really tough feat. And I think like when I was at university playing my last college game. It was during COVID, and like we got our season like ripped away from us, and it was just horrible. It's like the worst feeling ever. But it's really hard. You don't know what the next steps are in your lacrosse career. Maybe you're gonna go into coaching. Maybe you're gonna try and go for the pros. But everything's up in the air, and it's up to those players to kind of decide what their next steps are.
Definitely. There's a guy on the Delta Islanders that I really felt for this year. He was their captain, Reese Young, a product out of the Ridge Meadows Burrards Association. And the reason why I feel so much for him in this case, like a really quality player in my opinion, a really smart player, but having like half of his year kind of being taken away, and that he was injured at the beginning of the year, so he misses like half of his last ever season. And then of course he finally does help get his team into the playoffs. He played a big factor. So he's just a guy that I'm feeling for here, and that not only was it his last junior game ever, but also, missing half of the year. It's just got to be really tough for him. And then the rest of the seniors on that team as well. Like you said, it's a pretty tough pill to swallow and a pretty emotional moment for all those guys. So we can look forward now to what the rest of these teams are looking forward to as well, specifically the Coquitlam Adanacs, as we take a look at the remaining playoff picture here in BC. Of course, with Coquitlam sweeping Delta, they are now awaiting the winner of the Victoria and Nanaimo series. Again, that series is currently deadlocked at 2-2. Games 5, 6, and 7, remember it is just a best of 3 now, are going to go down Wednesday night, Saturday, and then Sunday. So some must-watch lacrosse is coming up this week over there on the island, and the Coquitlam Adanacs will hope that they continue to beat each other up and just pile up those penalty minutes. So I'm sure that they are going to be sitting back watching that series as it unfolds. We can also take a look over at the Ontario Lacrosse League. We'll look over at the Rocky Mountain League as well, but with the Minto Cup being just around the corner, we might as well take a peek at what the rest of the playoff picture is looking like here, because they are also, well, I shouldn't say also, because they are now into the semifinals. BC is currently still in the semifinals, but with more teams over there in Ontario, they have an extra round to deal with. So the first semifinal matchup will be the Whitby Warriors, who just took down actually the Minto hosts, St. Catharines.
Oh.
So St. Catharines, remember, they are still in the Minto because they get an automatic bid as the team that's hosting, but they lose in the first round to the Whitby Warriors.
Wow.
Pretty incredible feat for Whitby. They will face off against the Toronto Beaches. That's going to be a series that I'm keeping my eye on. I think Toronto is really good this year. In case anybody hasn't seen, Willem Firth is also one of the best players in all of Canada right now. He's just been piling up points this year. Liam Aston, Josh Mills, who came over from the Poco Saints. So there's some local factors over there as well.
Cool.
So that's a series to watch. And the other semifinal series, the other perennial contender over in Ontario, the Orangeville Northmen will face off against the Peterborough Lakers. That is going to be a very physical series. I cannot wait to watch that. And actually, both of those series get underway Tuesday night. So by the time this comes out, one of these four, or two of these four teams are going to be up 1-0 in those series. So remember, St. Catharines, they are hosting the Minto, but they are currently out of the playoff picture. Only one of these four remaining teams will go on to be the other Ontario team playing in the Minto Cup. And then we will wrap things up in the Rocky Mountain League. So the Raiders Lacrosse Club, again, they've been called at different points. Out here, I've heard some people call the Raiders Lacrosse Club the best team in Canada. Again, there are some other teams that have some things to say about that, but they are a quality team, and they are in a similar position, the same position actually, to the Adanacs, in that they are sitting back, waiting to see the winner of the other semifinal series between the Edmonton Miners and the Calgary Mountaineers. So the Raiders took down the Saskatchewan SWAT. They are now watching on the Calgary and Edmonton series, which sees Calgary in front right now, 3-1. Edmonton did just win the last game, and they're going to try to do, of course, the reverse sweep. Will they be successful? Time will tell. Games 5, 6, and 7 are going to go down Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, all in Calgary, by my understanding as well. So Edmonton's got a little bit of travel under their way. That is the playoff picture to this point. The breakdown is back. Megan is back. I'm back. And we will be back to get you all informed and ready to go as the playoffs continue to go down here and as we look towards the Minto Cup in a few short weeks. It's almost here.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, I cannot believe, considering the last Minto was in this arena behind us, I can't believe we are a year removed from that and just a few weeks away from the 2025 Minto Cup. I cannot believe it.
Time flies.
Time flies. All right, well, let's wrap things up here. This is another edition of The Breakdown. We thank you very much for joining us, for listening, for watching, and as per usual, on behalf of Megan and myself, Tino, Fera, and the entire crew of Trickshot, we will see you next time.